There are moments in life when you show up in someone's world not by accident, but as part of something greater, divinely guided, spiritually aligned, meant to bring light into their chaos. You didn't enter their life by chance. You were the calm in their storm, the understanding in their confusion, the strength in their weakness. You were the chosen one, not just for yourself, but for them. But instead of cherishing your presence, they mistreated you. They didn't just fail to see your value, they actively pushed it away. And now, the universe has moved in silence, pulling you out of their reach. That's their karma. That's the price of not honoring a gift they were never truly. Before we go deeper into this powerful message, I want to ask you, yes, you watching this right now, to stay with me until the end of this video. There is something sacred in these words, something your soul needs to absorb. And while you're here, I encourage you to leave your warmest wishes in the comments, along with the number 77. This is, you loved with purity. You gave with honesty. You forgave even when the pain was still fresh. You were patient in the face of disrespect. You tried again and again to make things right, not because you were weak, but because you were chosen to carry light where there was none. You were sent into their life at the exact moment they needed someone who would not give up on them, someone who saw their wounds and still chose to stay. But their ego blinded them. Their trauma chained them to patterns of sabotage, and so they tried to make you feel small. They manipulated your emotions. They took advantage of your kindness, your availability, your deep emotional presence. Every time you reached out, they distanced themselves more. Every time you tried to bring harmony, they brought conflict. They mistook your strength for weakness, your love for dependency, and they acted like your presence was a given, like you would always be there, no matter how carelessly they treated you. But here's the truth. The universe does not allow divine energy to. What they don't understand is that you weren't just a phase. You were a rare moment of divine timing, a mirror showing them who they could be if they stepped out of their shadow, a healer, a guide, a safe place. You were the reminder that love still exists in a world that has taught so many to shut down, and they threw it away. Or worse, they tried to destroy it. Now they sit in the space your absence has created, trying to fill it with distractions, other people, or ego-driven pursuits. But it doesn't work, because you were never replaceable. They don't miss you for what you gave materially, and that is the beginning of their karma. Karma is not always loud. It doesn't always come in grand punishments or dramatic endings. Sometimes, karma is silence. It's the stillness of a soul that realizes what they lost too late. It's the haunting thought that maybe, just maybe, they were the problem all along. It's the echo of your voice in their head, reminding them what real love felt like. It's the quiet regret that follows them in their happiest moments. Because even then, something feels missing. That something is you. You were the one who would have stood by them through anything. The one who would have helped them heal, not with pressure, but with presence. The one who believed in their better self when they didn't. But instead of choosing growth, they chose games. Instead of love, they chose control. And now, they're left with the consequences of their decisions. That's not your burden to carry anymore. You've done your part. You've paid your emotional debt. Now it's time to stand in your own light. When you walked away, truly walked away, something shifted. The energy they had grown, used to feeding off of, was gone. The peace they once ignored started to feel like a loss. They scroll through your old messages. They look at your photos. They think about reaching out, but they know deep down they've lost the version of you that once would have welcomed them back. And that's what stings the most. You didn't leave out of anger. You left out of clarity. The universe protects those who are pure in heart. It shields those who give love with no agenda. It may not always seem fair in the moment. Why are you the one left hurt while they continue their life like nothing happened? But trust this, the path of the chosen one is never without pain. It is through this pain that your power is activated. Your detachment becomes your freedom. Your silence becomes your strength. And your absence becomes their loudest lesson. Now, they may go on and pretend as if they're unaffected. They may post photos with new people, act like they're happy, move on with their lives. But energy doesn't lie. Deep inside, there is a void that nothing fills. They might laugh louder, but it's forced. They might look unbothered, but it's an act. Because deep down, their soul knows. It had a chance at something sacred, and it threw it away. That's their karma, and it will replay in every future relationship until they choose to truly evolve. Meanwhile, your role isn't to wish them pain. Your role is to rise, to live fully, to heal, to grow into the version of yourself that your younger self would be proud of. You didn't lose them, they lost you. You gained freedom, clarity, and protection from someone who would have only continued to drain your spirit. And now, the universe is preparing to surround you with people who see you, value you, and honor you. Not because you demand it, but because you radiate it. They'll look back one day and realize you were the turning point they ignored, the angel they mistreated, the blessing they mishandled. And by the time that truth fully lands in their heart, you'll be so far gone, they'll have no choice but to deal with the silence you left behind. That silence, that's not empty. That silence is karmic echo. That silence is growth they never earned. That silence is the voice of the universe saying, you had your chance. And that is only the beginning. You didn't just walk away, you evolved. The moment you decided to stop proving your worth to someone who was committed to misunderstanding you, something profound awakened in you. That moment wasn't just about physical distance, it was spiritual separation, a divine rerouting. You weren't rejecting love, you were rejecting disrespect. You weren't closing your heart, you were protecting your soul. And now, in the space where once there was confusion, there is clarity. In the space where there was chaos, there is peace. But that peace came at a cost, didn't it? Because even though you knew you were doing the right thing, it still hurt. It hurt to walk away from someone you once prayed for. It hurt to release the vision of what could have been. It hurt to accept that someone you gave your best to could give you so little in return. You spent nights questioning yourself, wondering if you were too much or not enough, wondering what more you could have done. But here's what you need to know now. You were never the problem. Your light simply exposed their shadows, and instead of choosing to rise with you, they chose to hide behind their ego. And now, that very ego is their prison. The truth is, they had never encountered someone like you before, and they might not ever again. You weren't just another experience. You were the exception, the kind of soul that stays with a person long after the goodbye, the kind that reshapes how they see love, trust, and connection. And though they may not admit it out loud, they know it deep within. That knowing lingers. It follows them into the quiet moments, into their dreams, into the hollow places where they tried to bury what they lost. They try to distract themselves. New faces, old habits, temporary highs, but nothing lasts. Nothing feels as whole as it did when you were there. Because the bond they had with you wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual, soul level, cosmic. That type of connection doesn't fade with time. It expands. It grows stronger in absence. And now that energy is haunting them. Not because you cursed them, but because the universe is showing them what happens when you mishandle sacred energy. And the universe always balances what is out of alignment. While they sit in the wake of what they ruined, you're being restored. Everything they took from you, your peace, your energy, your sense of self, is being returned to you tenfold. Not in the form of revenge, but in the form of renewal. You're remembering your worth. You're rediscovering your voice. You're reclaiming your power. You're no longer asking for love, you're becoming it. You're no longer begging to be seen. You're shining so brightly that those who cannot handle your light simply fall away. And isn't that beautiful? Because what once felt like abandonment now feels like liberation. What once felt like heartbreak now feels like divine redirection. You're no longer available to people who need to be convinced of your value. You're no longer trying to prove your loyalty to those who proved their disloyalty. You're walking in a new vibration, a frequency where only those aligned with truth, love, and respect can reach you. But that doesn't mean you've become cold. It doesn't mean you've hardened. In fact, you're softer than ever, but selectively. Your kindness is still alive, but it's no longer blind. Your love is still vast, but it's no longer unguarded. You've learned that even blessings need boundaries. And now, you give not from a place of proving, but from a place of overflow. You're no longer pouring into empty cups, you're filling your own. Meanwhile, they're still seeking in others what they once had in you. They're still chasing echoes of your presence in people who don't even speak your language. They might laugh louder now, pretend they've moved on, post curated moments online, but the soul doesn't lie. And their soul feels your absence like a phantom limb. It's there, and it aches. What they lost wasn't just love. It was their opportunity to grow, to evolve, to become. You were the invitation to a better version of themselves, the one who would have walked with them through healing, through truth, through transformation. But they rejected that path, and the universe does not offer the same sacred invitation twice in the same way. Now their journey must begin without you. Now they must sit with the choices they made in your presence and the consequences that come with your absence. That's what karma truly is. It's not about revenge. It's about realization. It's about the moment someone wakes up to the weight of what they've done, not when you're around to witness it, but when they're alone with the truth. Karma doesn't always come fast, but it always comes fair. And when it does, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives. In a conversation, in a memory, in a loss, in the quiet grief of what can never be repaired. But you're not responsible for their karma. You're responsible for your healing. And every step you take away from that pain is a declaration that you choose yourself, that you honor your heart, that you trust the path even when you don't understand it all. And in doing so, you inspire others who have been hurt, broken, betrayed, to rise too. Because being the chosen one isn't just about being the light in someone else's story. It's about realizing you're the light in your own. This chapter in your life was never a punishment. It was a revelation, a sacred unveiling of your strength, your boundaries, your power. And now that you've seen the truth, you can never go back to the version of yourself that tolerated less. That version is gone. And in its place stands someone unshakable. Someone who has been refined by fire, not destroyed by it. So when they think of you, and they will, let them remember not just what they lost, but who you became because of it. Let your growth be their echo. Let your peace be their mirror. Let your silence speak volumes. Because the chosen one never truly loses. The chosen one evolves. There comes a moment in the healing journey when the pain that once consumed you starts to feel distant, like a story you remember but no longer relive. The memories are still there, but they no longer control your breath, your day, or your dreams. You don't flinch at their name anymore. You don't spiral when you see something that reminds you of them. Instead, there's a calm detachment, a knowing that what happened wasn't a curse, but a catalyst, a moment that marked the beginning of your becoming. You were never meant to stay where you were disrespected. You were never meant to shrink so that someone else could feel tall. The universe didn't create you with so much light for it to be dimmed in someone else's shadow. And now that you've stepped into your power, you see everything more clearly. You see how their love came with conditions, how their apologies were hollow, how they only gave when they feared losing control. It wasn't love, it was possession. It was convenience. It was manipulation dressed as affection. And even though they may have called it love, your soul always knew something was missing. Because love doesn't gaslight. Love doesn't guilt. Love doesn't punish you for having a heart. Love doesn't walk away the moment you need support. Real love is consistent. It's safe. It's rooted in truth, not ego. And deep down, that's what you were trying to teach them. Not with lectures, but with presence, with loyalty, with compassion. You were showing them what love could be, if only they were willing to open their heart fully. But they weren't ready, and your soul couldn't wait in that place of spiritual starvation any longer. Leaving wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You realized that staying would only teach them that you'd tolerate less than you deserve. You realized that holding on was actually holding you back. You realized that peace was more important than proving a point. And in that realization, you broke the cycle. You ended the pattern. You reclaimed your narrative. And they felt that shift. The energy changed the moment you stopped reacting. The moment you stopped checking in, stopped hoping they'd change, stopped trying to remind them of your worth. That silence wasn't just a lack of words. It was a spiritual boundary. It was the moment your soul said, enough. And though they may pretend it doesn't matter, it does. Because silence from the chosen one speaks louder than any argument ever could. They might try to replace you. They might surround themselves with noise. They might even convince themselves they're happier now. But the truth is, they are haunted by the reflection of who they were when they were with you, and who they could have become had they chosen differently. That's the ache they don't talk about. That's the lesson they can't run from. Because energy doesn't lie. And the energy you brought into their life was healing, pure, steady. It soothed their chaos, even if they didn't realize it at the time. Now, in your absence, the chaos returns. The same patterns they had when they met you. The insecurity, the fear, the self-sabotage, it all remains. Because they never dealt with the root. They simply buried it under your love. And now that your love is gone, everything they've avoided comes back up. That is karma in its truest form. Not revenge, but revelation. And that's the part they never expected. They thought walking away would hurt you more. They thought they had the power. They thought you'd always come back. But this time, you didn't. This time, your silence became permanent. And that's when the fear set in. Not just fear of losing you, but fear of facing who they are without the comfort of your energy. Fear of confronting the mirror you held up to them. Fear of admitting that maybe the problem was never you. Maybe it was the way they loved, or more truthfully, the way they didn't. And that's a truth they'll have to carry alone. You, on the other hand, are walking into a new season. A season of clarity, peace, and reciprocity. You're starting to attract people who don't need to be taught how to love. People who already know how to honor connection. People who aren't afraid of truth. And you recognize them easily now because you've been through what love isn't. You've lived through confusion, emotional withdrawal, mixed signals, and conditional affection. And now, anything less than clarity feels foreign. You no longer chase energy that drains you, and with every step forward, you become more of who you were always meant to be. Someone anchored in purpose, not pain. Someone who leads with love, but not at the expense of self. Someone who knows that leaving isn't loss when you're choosing your soul in the process. You're not bitter. You're not angry. You're just awake. Awake to your value. Awake to your calling. Awake to the truth that not everyone deserves access to your energy, no matter how much you care. That is the shift. That is the upgrade. That is the power of being the chosen one. You weren't sent into their life to be used, broken, or silenced. You were sent to be a light, to ignite transformation, to open the door to a new way of being. Whether or not they walked through that door was their choice. And their choice comes with consequence. Because life is a series of energy exchanges, and every time someone receives love and returns harm, they accumulate a debt. Not to you, but to their own evolution. That debt must be paid, not in punishment, but in awareness, in lessons, in loss. You didn't curse them, you blessed them. And now, the universe is blessing you. Not because you were perfect, but because you stayed true. Because you didn't retaliate. Because you left in peace, even when you had every right to burn bridges. Because your heart stayed soft, even after being bruised. That's why doors are opening. That's why opportunities are aligning. That's why love, real love, is making its way to you. Because you didn't let their behavior change your essence. They may never say it out loud, but they know. They know what they had. They know what they lost. They know they'll never find it again. Not because you're superior, but because your energy was unmatched. It was once in a lifetime. It was divinely guided. And now, it's gone. That is their karma. And this is your elevation. Sometimes the loudest justice is found in the silence that follows your absence, in the spaces where your laughter used to live, in the warmth they now try to recreate, but can't. They underestimated the gravity of your presence because you made it look so effortless to give. You gave love with open hands. You gave support with no conditions. You gave understanding without judgment. And they mistook that for weakness, when in truth, it was your strength. You were never needy. You were never too much. You were simply real in a world that had taught them to value the superficial. You offered depth in a place they only knew how to tread water. And instead of learning how to swim beside you, they drifted back to the shallow, to what was easy, to what required no change. But you chose the ocean. You chose growth, even when it meant being alone. You chose solitude over settling. You chose to walk through the discomfort of healing, while they chose distraction. And now, the paths have fully separated. What once felt like an open door is now a closed chapter. Not out of hatred, but out of necessity. Because when someone refuses to evolve, they begin to expire in your energy field. Their presence becomes heavy. their words lose meaning. And even if the love once felt real, it no longer aligns with the person you're becoming. And you are becoming. You are more grounded now, more selective. You see through the sweet words and empty promises. You trust patterns, not potential. You no longer romanticize the idea of being the one who saves them. That savior complex has died because you've learned the difference between love and labor. Love doesn't feel like a full-time job where you're the only one clocked in. Love is mutual, sacred, intentional, and anything less than that is not your burden to carry anymore. They lost you because they couldn't match you. Not financially, not physically, but energetically, spiritually, emotionally. They weren't equipped to meet you at your level. And instead of rising, they resented the mirror you held up. They confused reflection with rejection. And in trying to escape the discomfort of self-awareness, they distanced themselves from the one person who actually wanted to love them through it. That is the tragedy they now live with. You may have mourned the connection, but they are now mourning you. Not just the loss of a relationship, but the loss of access. Access to your wisdom, to your nurturing, to your energy. And as time passes, that realization only deepens, because time doesn't heal wounds that were caused by one's own hands. It magnifies them. Every opportunity they sabotaged. Every time they chose ego over vulnerability. Every moment they had to choose you, but didn't. And now, life is showing them. Not because you wished it, but because it's how alignment works. You don't lose someone like you without consequence. The universe doesn't bless those who misuse divine energy without eventually requiring a debt to be paid. And while they sit with that grief, you're expanding. You're aligning with your purpose, your peace, your power. You're building a reality that reflects your worth, not your wounds. Because this was never just about love. It was about identity. You were forced to see who you were when everything you gave was overlooked. You were forced to meet the parts of yourself that were conditioned to chase, to overextend, to settle for crumbs. And in the pain, you found power. You saw yourself clearly. And now, you no longer beg to be chosen. You are the choice. You no longer perform for love. You embody it. And in doing so, you create a standard that few can meet, but many will try. And while they remember the version of you who waited, hoped, pleaded, let them know that version no longer exists. You've evolved into someone who no longer explains their worth to the unwilling. Someone who understands that silence is an answer and distance is a boundary. Someone who can grieve the loss of potential, but still protect their peace. This is your new era, an era where you are no longer rescuing people from their own chaos, an era where you are protecting your energy like the rare and sacred force it is. Because you know now, not everyone deserves access to you, especially not those who had a front row seat to your soul and still couldn't see your value. They didn't just lose a partner, they lost a healer, a guide, a mirror, a light. And as that light grows brighter without them, the shadow they cast becomes harder to ignore. That's what karma looks like. Not fire and fury, but stillness, emptiness, the kind that echoes in the night, the kind that whispers, you had everything, and now you have nothing. And you've gained everything. Clarity, confidence, discernment, peace, the kind of peace that isn't shaken by someone else's confusion, the kind of peace that says, I'm not angry, I'm free. You've arrived at a place where the past no longer holds you hostage, where your love is no longer currency. It's a gift given only to those who've earned it. You no longer seek closure, because closure came the moment you chose yourself. And that's what they never expected, that you'd really leave, that you'd actually stop responding, that your "I'm done" would be real this time. Because they were used to the old version of you, the one who gave third, fourth, fifth chances, the one who loved with no limit, the one who saw their wounds and tried to heal them. But this version of you knows that not all wounded people want to heal. Some just want to bleed on you. And you've bled enough. Now, you rise, not to prove anything, not to get revenge, but because it's who you were, always meant to be. You've come home to yourself, and in doing so, you've become untouchable to those who only loved the idea of you, but not the responsibility of honoring you. They lost you. That is their karma. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't need to make loud announcements, expose them, or prove your worth in front of an audience. Your absence became the most powerful response, because the chosen one doesn't retaliate, they transcend. And that's exactly what you've done. The most profound realization comes in the quiet moments, when they scroll through old messages and feel a sting they never expected, when they hear your favorite song in a crowded place and the air feels heavier, when they meet someone new and feel nothing close to what they felt with you. That's when the truth hits. Not all losses are loud. Some echo forever. And you, your love, your energy, your patience, your soul, will echo in places they can't escape. You became the what if that haunts their thoughts. What if they had treated you with the care you gave so freely? What if they had honored you instead of testing how far they could push before you broke? What if they had realized that love doesn't come around like that twice? But they didn't, because in the moment, they were blind to the rarity of what they had. They confused your consistency with predictability. They thought you'd always be there, no matter how much they pulled away, disappeared, disappointed. They were wrong. And now, they sit with that, with the memory of someone who was all in, someone who loved them at their lowest, someone who stayed even when it hurt. And now that you're gone, that kind of presence feels impossible to replace. Because it is. It's easy to find attention, but it's rare to find connection. Anyone can offer temporary affection, shallow conversation, or physical closeness. But what you offered was depth, security, intimacy beyond the surface. And they're discovering the hard way that not every smile is sincere, not every partner is real, and not every bond is sacred. You weren't perfect, but you were true. And in a world full of masks, that's what made you unforgettable. Even if they pretend to have moved on, even if they post pictures with someone new, even if they say it doesn't hurt, they know. Deep down, they know. And the worst part? They can't undo the damage. They can't go back to who they were with you, because you're no longer available to be that safe place. Their chance was sacred, and they wasted it. And here's the part they'll never admit. They believed you'd never really leave. They believed you'd always be the one to fix things, to text first, to forgive quickly, to keep the connection alive. But what they didn't realize is that the strongest people don't always fight. Sometimes they walk away, not because they didn't care, but because they finally started caring for themselves. That's the power of the chosen one. You don't beg for love, you are love. You don't settle for breadcrumbs when you know you were born to feast. You don't chase energy that has no idea how to hold what you offer. You observe, you learn. And when the time is right, you exit. And when you do, you take all of your light with you. And suddenly, they're left in the dark. They try to recreate your vibe in others. But no one sounds like you. No one loves like you. No one forgives like you. And now, they're comparing every future connection to what they once had. But the chosen one can't be cloned. You were divinely designed for a moment in their life that will never come again. That was your gift. And now, it's their ghost. You might not ever hear it from their lips, but it shows in their eyes, in their behavior, in their silence. That's where karma lives. In the moments they pretend not to care, but their spirit whispers otherwise. When they smile for the world, but crumble in solitude. When they try to distract themselves with noise, but hear your name in the quiet. That's not a curse, it's consequence. Because you weren't just another chapter. You were the turning point. The one who could have changed everything had they chosen differently. But now that path is gone. The door is closed, and they are left walking in circles, wondering what could have been if they had simply loved you right. You, on the other hand, are no longer waiting for an apology that may never come. You're no longer holding space for someone who couldn't hold you. You've redirected your energy to yourself, to your growth, to the people and paths that honor your heart. Because here's the truth. When you let go of what breaks you, you make room for what builds you. And that's what you're doing now, building. Not from bitterness, but from awareness. You've turned your pain into wisdom, your tears into strength, your wounds into wisdom. And nothing, not their silence, not their regret, not even their return, can take that away from you. Because they had you at your purest. And they still walked away. That will never be your burden to carry again. That's theirs. That's their karma. You no longer walk with the weight of what they did. You don't carry the confusion of why they couldn't love you right. You've laid that burden down. Because what once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. What once broke your heart became the breakthrough that set your soul free. And looking back, you don't need revenge. You don't even need the apology. You simply need the truth. And the truth is this: they weren't capable of loving you the way you deserved. Not because you were too much, but because they weren't enough for someone like you. You were offering a depth they had never explored within themselves. You were a mirror to everything they hadn't yet healed. And instead of facing that reflection, they ran from it. They mistook your vulnerability for weakness, your loyalty for naivety, your silence for indifference. But you knew all along. You felt the dissonance in their energy. You sensed the shift before they said a word. You recognized the pattern, even if it took a while to accept it. Because deep within you, your spirit knew. You were outgrowing what no longer aligned with your purpose. And while your heart may have resisted that truth at first, your soul surrendered to it. And that surrender changed everything. Because when you finally stop trying to hold on to what's slipping away, your hands are free to receive what's meant for you. And now, that's exactly what you're doing. You're receiving peace. You're receiving clarity. You're receiving a new level of love, starting with the love you give to yourself. You've outgrown the version of you who accepted chaos as passion, who confused unpredictability with connection, who mistook being needed for being loved. That version of you gave everything, even when it cost you yourself. And now you pour into yourself first. Now you protect your energy with sacred discernment. Now you know the difference between intensity and intimacy, and you choose the kind that builds you, not breaks you. They thought losing you would humble you, but it healed you. They thought you'd collapse without their presence, but you created an entirely new path, one where you don't have to chase love, one where you don't have to prove your worth, one where you are chosen by those who already see you without having to be convinced. And in that space, you've become magnetic, glowing, elevated. Because the chosen one never stays down for long. You rise, every time, stronger, wiser, softer, yet more powerful. And now your story has become your testimony. Your journey has become your legacy. You're no longer just surviving heartbreak. You're guiding others through theirs. You're a living example of how pain can become purpose, of how loss can lead to light, of how being mistreated wasn't the end, it was the beginning of you knowing your value, the beginning of you breaking generational patterns, the beginning of you demanding more, simply by being more. And maybe they'll see you from afar someday. Maybe they'll watch your growth and remember how they once had front-row access to your spirit. Maybe they'll reach for you in a moment of nostalgia, only to find that your energy no longer resides where they left it. That version of you is gone, and with it, the chances they wasted. They will feel it, not in public, where they can mask it, but in private, in the quiet, when no one's around to distract them from the truth. That's how karma works. It doesn't arrive as punishment. It arrives as realization, as remembering, as regret. And in that regret, they'll relive the moments you begged for connection, the times you forgave too soon, the nights you cried in silence, the days you doubted your worth because of how they treated you. They'll see it all. And it won't be a nightmare. It'll be a memory they can't outrun. But you're free. You've closed the chapter not with anger, but with grace. Not because you wanted to forget them, but because you wanted to remember you. The real you. The whole you. The version of you that was never broken, just buried under the weight of someone who didn't know how to carry a soul like yours. Now, you are no longer buried. You are blooming. And your growth will always be a reminder, not of what they lost, but of what you found, yourself. That's the real victory. That's the real justice. That's the final truth. They lost you, and that is their karma.